And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us, and one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it, and that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Tonight's episode, we're going to be joined by my guest, Morgan. Morgan is a host of the Ghoulfriend Hour paranormal podcast. She's had a lot of weird paranormal experiences she wanted to come on here and share with us, so definitely looking forward to talking with her. Before we bring Morgan on, if you've ever had an experience and you would like to be on an episode of Tinfoil Tales, there's a couple things you can do. You can either send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Either way works for me. Just make sure to send me a message, and we will get something scheduled for a future episode. If you'd like to help the podcast out, please continue to share it around. Word of mouth helps the podcast grow. And you can also leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to Tinfoil Tales at. So just make sure to do that. Helps me out and helps the show out. If you're interested in joining the Patreon, you can get ad-free episodes, early access to all the episodes before they're released publicly, and some other cool bonus content. So make sure to check the show notes out for a link to the Patreon. It's only $1.99 a month. And if you hate the ads like I do, it might be worth checking into. Make sure to follow me around on all the social medias. And if you're interested in getting some merch, make sure to reach out to me because I do have merch available like shirts and stickers and other cool things. So just look for Brandon Tinfoil Tales on Facebook and you can get a hold of me that way. We're going to go ahead now and bring Morgan on. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight, Morgan. Thanks for coming on here and talking to me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Morgan Feza. I am the owner and host of the podcast, The Ghoulfriend Hour. We are a spooky, true crime, just kind of mixed podcast, just getting different views, opinions, perspectives, and experiences of just stuff in the paranormal realm. And that's pretty much my general synopsis right there.
What would possess you to want to start looking into the paranormal and then wanting to join this crazy world of podcasting?
Oh man. Okay. So we're gonna crack open the very large encyclopedia chapter book I got going on. So when I was a young child, I think we realized relatively quickly, my mom did, that I was very sensitive, and I definitely had a gift, but it was something that we didn't really talk about for a long time. And I went to live with my grandparents. My mom had she was going through some stuff, and my grandparents took guardianship of me. And so living in their house, they lived in a super old, it was like a lake house in Lake Hiawatha, New Jersey. And there had been, since I was young, I could feel that there were definitely multiple spirits that were in that house. I never really had a face or anything to put to them until I was probably, let's see, I want to say I was probably in maybe middle school or high school. I don't remember exactly how old I was. I, long story short, had been very afflicted by a certain entity in that home. There was multiple entities, but one that particularly liked to target me. And I just felt like I will never know or feel comfortable calling it maybe inhuman or demonic. I don't really like, 'cause that word's thrown around a lot, but it
Everything's
was certain.
demons these days.
Yeah, I'm like, I hate that. Like everything's a demon. I'm like, that's not true, So I am hesitant to throw around the D word, but I do feel like whatever this was, it targeted me for a very long time. And I felt like there were other spirits in the home that definitely protected me and maybe were some of my guides. I'm not really sure. But this one particular entity just focused a lot of its energy on me, and it terrified me for a really long time. And so I think I was about in middle school or high school. I talk about this on the podcast. I had this very vivid, just absolutely visceral, terrifying nightmare. And what set it apart from any nightmare that I had ever had as a child was that I finally was able to put a face to this entity. And it scared me so bad that even as a 30-year-old woman now, I still remember it very, very like vividly, like it happened yesterday. And this entity basically, this happened long before Insidious came out, but I think the reason the movie Insidious scares me as bad as it does is because when I first saw Insidious for the very first time, it was almost like a really nasty flashback because I felt like I jumped back into this nightmare that I had had about this entity. Um, I am trying to think about how to summarize this into a very short story, but um, I just felt like always like when I was in the dark, when I was getting ready to go up to my bedroom, when I was sleeping, there was a mirror across from my bed. This thing would just constantly appear, and like it was just kind of a dark mass, and it was just like always like letting me know that it was there and just taunting me. And I didn't have the knowledge then that I do now about protecting myself and protecting my space. And so I had this nightmare, and it was like I started to sleep in my living room because I was so terrified to sleep upstairs in my bedroom. And I would constantly sleep on the floor in the living room in like a little sleeping bag, and I would keep the TV on at all times. And so this particular night I had laid down, closed my eyes, and it felt like that, in Stranger Things where the worlds just kind of flip
Mm-hmm.
and everything is like a muted blue, but it's still you're still in your house, you're still where you went to bed. And so it felt like I closed my eyes, I went to sleep, but then I like opened my eyes up because something woke me up. And I woke up, sat up, was still in my living room, looked around, and I was like, this is my living room. My grandparents were there, my aunt's sitting on the couch behind us, and she lived with us at the time. And so I was like, okay, like I felt the same that I did, but I'm like, something just looked off. And I felt almost like just like prey, I think is the best way to describe it. So I heard my name being called from the hallway stairs of that are like right across from where I was sleeping. And the thing about our stairs is this is an old lake house, so it wasn't stairs like with a banister or something where from a distance I could kind of see up the stairs a little bit. It was had a very like 60s, 70s like wood paneling all around the living room, and it covers that wall. So you just pretty much see the landing of the stairs. And I could see that hall light was on, and I heard something calling my name in a very like sing-songy voice, and it was just like Morgan. And I just knew something didn't feel good. And then all of a sudden, my grandparents kind of disappeared, like they just dissipated. And my aunt walked with me, and we walked toward the stairs. And I remember her kind of saying behind me, uh, like, what is that? And we looked up the stairs, and my mom, who at the time was not in the picture, who obviously as a younger child, like I missed her a lot. I wanted to be in her presence. Whatever this was very much disguising itself as her, and it was standing at the very top of the stairs. So there's probably about 18 stairs going upstairs. So it was a decent from bottom to top, looking up there. And I just felt like there was something off about it. It freaked me out. And I was like, I don't think that's my mom. And I remember my aunt then saying to me, that's not your mom. Do not go up there. And then she was almost like silence, like she just disappeared. Um, And I remember this thing, then she disappears. I look up the stairs, and it had completely, because I didn't believe it was my mom, and I felt like it was getting very frustrated, very angry, and it removed its face. Like, it was like not my mom anymore. It did not have that skin on, and it was just this snarling, nasty, like disgusting creature with just black holes for eyes. Um, and for the longest time, I was terrified of anything with no eyes in its sockets because of this. And so it kept trying to like gravitationally pull me up the stairs. And in my dream, I was just like fighting and fighting. And I remember like at one point, like legitimately holding on to the wall of the base of the stairs there. And I was like, you're not going to take me. And just like praying and just like almost like pleading with God to pull me out of this dream. And it literally said that, like, I'm coming back for you. I'm going to kill you. I woke up and I remember being in my being in my living room and hearing something run down the hall. That freaked me out. And I was like, whatever this is, that was not a dream. And whatever this is saw a vulnerable point to kind of attack me. And I had little supernatural experiences up until that point here and there, which is, I think, kind of how I put two and two together, that I had a gift. But when this thing specifically started to kind of target me is when I started to say, hey, am I crazy? Like, am I mentally ill? Like, is there something wrong with me? Or is something like genuinely like attacking me? Like, is this real life? And I think from that point on, that was really the reason I tell you this long-winded story, is because that was the trajectory. Like, that was that pivotal moment that shot me into trying to figure out why I was so afflicted by the afterlife, and why was I seeing things that other people didn't believe me about, or why was I seeing people that other people couldn't see. And so shortly following that dream, I then proceeded, to kind of pray, and I put some rosaries around my room. And, you know, there, I had mentioned, there was a mirror across from my bed. We had redone my bedroom, and my grandparents were so nice. They had gotten me this beautiful dresser that had this very large mirror on the top of it. Um, and the way that my room was set up, we had no other choice, but it had to sit directly across from my bed. Um, and this entity, I had tried to kind of protect my room and kind of drawn boundaries from like books that I took out in the library, just things that I was reading. And it would find a way to come through my mirror and still try and find a way to like terrorize me. And after that, I had another dream that was very realistic, except for it wasn't a nightmare this time. This time I had a very vivid dream about what I assume it was a Native American chief, and he was in a large like headdress. He just carried an air about him of just protection and authority and just like love, but like sternness, and like just that protection is the word that comes to mind when I think of him. And there was then a woman standing next to him, and she just looked maybe like 1930s, 1940s time period, with a little boy that she was holding hands with. And they just kind of looked at me, and I remember I was so afraid to go to bed because I had been constantly being attacked by whatever this was at my grandparents' house, and not being able to talk about it, and not being able to go to anybody. So it was just, spooky library books trying to read about it. And the internet wasn't a huge thing yet. So I was just like, who do I go to for help? And I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard. And it was like I had just been praying for something to offer me protection, something to kind of help me through. And I had this dream about these three spirits that I just truly feel were the spirits that were residing in my house amongst this nastier entity. Um, that just made me feel like they brought that fear down and they made me feel seen and heard and protected and empowered. And I thought that was really special. So that whole kind of being brought up in this haunted house, just kind of trying, it's kind of hard, to summarize almost 20 something years of experiences that I had in that house to just the pivotal moments. But
Yeah.
those were kind of those experiences that really shot me forward into the paranormal and made me realize, like, okay, I don't think I'm crazy. I think what's happening is logical, it's real. I started to watch some more paranormal shows, and we all know paranormal shows are a lot of fluff and yada yada, but there are some good resources in there, and kind of seeing people like Lorraine Warren and Ryan Buell, um, at the time, it was helpful to kind of be seen and heard. And so I saw what they were doing and I wanted to learn for myself, why do these things attack us? Why do they attach to us? Why do we what happens to us after we die? And so that's kind of the short but long-winded answer to how I got into this and kind of what really sparked that.
Now, you mentioned something about a mirror when you were younger.
Yep.
It's when you mentioned the mirror, it's been stuck in my head and I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to interrupt. Was that mirror on an outside wall or was it on an inner wall, like inside the house?
So it was on an inside wall. So it was attached to my dresser, like
Okay.
yeah.
Let's say I've heard before that if someone places a mirror on a wall that's actually towards the outside of the home, that is a gateway to bring in entities. I don't know how true that is or anything about it, but I've heard that. And I realized that my wife had had one in our house and we'd been having some weird stuff going on this past winter. And I asked her to please move the mirror
Yeah.
because I feel like maybe that's me being superstitious, me being overcautious or whatever, but I would just feel a little bit better if we didn't have the mirror right there. So I had her move the mirror and I don't know if it helped, but at least
Yeah,
tried
so
something.
yeah, and so kind of like a little educational moment. I learned after this, kind of getting more into the paranormal field and learning more and doing my research. Mirrors in many cultures, there was a reason why when somebody would pass away, traditional mourning experiences were you covered all the mirrors in the house, you stopped the clocks at the time of death. There was all these different practices because I do truly believe that mirrors are 1,000% a portal, but I also have learned that mirrors, they're a portal, but there's also a lot to do with intention. So although obviously I was not, nobody at a young age is intending for something that nasty to kind of follow you and attack you for most of your life. But what I'm kind of saying is if somebody has an old dresser and there's a lot of fighting in the home and there's a lot of turmoil, and mirrors are they soak that up. And if somebody's using it for spell work and then they just decide to donate it to Goodwill and they leave it open-ended, that could draw some stuff in. But then there's also been practices where witches tell you to take small mirrors if you're having a lot of bad luck or you're having a lot of issues. If you flip them and stick them facing out of a window, facing away from your home, that it will reflect or deflect, I guess I should say, any evil intentions, hexes, or curse. So I think that there's a lot of different beliefs. But from my own personal experience, and that wasn't the only mirror experience that I've had, mirrors are very much a portal, and my husband could attest to this. I think I have, besides our bathroom mirrors, I have one mirror in my entire house because I am not a mirror person. And even that mirror, it's a workout mirror. It's like one of those like Lululemon mirrors that like, you can work out in. And even that, I don't like it's downstairs in my living area and it's nowhere in a bedroom. Even when my daughter was little, I was like, she will not have a mirror in her bedroom. Like I'm very big on I'm a no mirror household. For the reason that I do think that it's very easy to not intentionally, but sometimes, even unintentionally invite things into your home through a mirror. And there's just, I highly suggest looking into it because there's a lot of mirror folklore. And having experienced what I have, I just call it traumatization, whatever you want to call it. I'm not a mirror person.
We have several in the house, and I don't ever think anything about it. It was there a few years ago. My kids were doing, I don't remember if it was Bloody Mary or whatever. They were doing something in the mirror, and I was recording it, and they didn't know. And I scared the crap out of them because that's what you get for trying something stupid in the mirror. But I've had all sorts of little random weird stuff that's went on in the house, and for me, it's just like I try and explain it away the best I can. But there's just some things that you can't explain.
Yeah.
That's how I go through life. And for me, I doing what I do now and what people I talk to, and I'm being more open minded. Like I've always said, I'm very skeptical, but I think I'm less skeptical than I ever used to be because I'm starting to believe a lot of the weird stuff. Stuff that
Yeah.
years ago I would never even consider. Oh, that's just craziness. But there's a lot of unexplained things. And with all the people I'm talking to, not everyone in the world can be crazy that's had some sort of experience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's depending on like I don't know what your belief system is, but I do think belief systems can kind of merge with one another, and I think there's different things that we can take away from different practices. And if your mirrors in your home are cause for concern, especially because you have kids, I know that there are ways that you can use simple household herbs and even a Sharpie marker, things like that, that you can, in quotations, like lock your mirror and protect it from, unwanted, undesired activity.
Yeah, I haven't went to that extreme. I don't, like I said, I don't think there's anything that goes on is mirror related. I think a lot of it is something else related. And part of the reason I don't do my show in my house anymore is because I think sometimes these things can be a gateway for things to enter just from the people you talk to. I never used to think
Yeah,
that, but
yeah,
the more I've done this show, that someone literally warned me when I first started, and I've said it multiple times, like they claim when you start looking into stuff like this, sometimes things look back.
yeah, yeah. And it's true. It's true. Definitely just I think knowing how to protect yourself, and it's a lot of it is intention. And you're probably going to hear me say that a ton, but it 100% is because I think as long as you find a way to kind of cleanse your environment and just keep your vibration at a higher point, which listen, we can't be rainbows and sunshines all the time. Like that's not realistic. But I think keeping yourself at a point where like you're not dark and dreary after having those conversations and you're able to kind of wipe it off and not let it become a sludge is super important because like I've had guests before where I get done talking to them and I feel not that they're yucky or just but it's the topics and the darker things that we kind of talk about feel yucky.
Hmm.
And I think knowing how to kind of wash that off of yourself and just keep your environment high vibration is like super, super important, especially when you're talking about these things, because you're 100% right. I think anything that you give attention to, it's intention. If you're talking about it, there is power in manifestation and kind of when you talk about something, you give attention to it and you give it power.
Mm-hmm. My wife and
So,
I had made a little pact amongst ourselves that we just won't talk about it because for that reason right there is I don't want to give something power.
yep, yep. And it's funny because we were just recently at the Warren Paracon, and I asked the question. So the gentleman who blesses a lot of the statues and whatnot, we had a pretty great conversation with him. And he was talking about some of the relics and some of the things that they had, and I said, well, which one is your favorite? Like, just thinking, like, because he seemed very passionate about it, but not thinking about the power of that question. And the one thing, he kind of looked at me and he said, I don't have a favorite and I don't want to give them that attention, but I have ones that I find particularly interesting. And he's like, but I don't like to talk about it like that. But he said, because for that reason, I mean, if you give it attention, it grows.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's that's my philosophy on it too. Is I don't want to try and give anything any sort of power if I can keep away from doing that. That's what I've been trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, but yeah, so there's been, I just feel like being plagued by paranormal activity most of my life. Um, just seems to be like a common theme. And I was like, well, if I wanted to start a podcast, I'm like, I'm going to talk about something that I know my stuff on and that I still have a curiosity and still have a lot to learn about. And I was like, there's no better topic than the paranormal. So that's what led me here.
How long have you been doing the podcast?
So we just finally hit a year in June. Um, it's been a wild ride. I have two co-hosts that are part-time. They have jobs, and one of my co-hosts has one of her she has her own business that she works at. So they are on part-time sometimes for guests and whatnot, but you'll see Rachel and Taylor. And yeah.
Sorry, I was taking a drink.
No, you're you're good.
I've been battling some sort of sickness for the last week and a half, and my daughter had pneumonia, and I've been having a hellacious cough for
Oh
over a week.
no.
So I was like, I probably had pneumonia too, but I don't ever go to the doctor. So,
Yeah, don't let that go too far. You gotta take care of yourself.
but no, far as like with your podcast and everything else, where can people find it as available? Like pretty much on any of the podcast catching streamer things.
Yeah, yeah. So we if you go to our Instagram, I always say going to our Instagram is the easiest because we have our link tree there. So you can click on that and it'll take you to everywhere we stream. We have YouTube and TikTok and all the Apple, Spotify, good stuff. So yeah, so I always say start with our Instagram. It's the Ghoulfriend Hour. It's yeah, pretty much our name. It's the underscore Ghoulfriend underscore hour underscore. There's a lot of underscores because Instagram likes to make you work for a special title that isn't already taken.
Right. I am Tinfoil Tales on every other form of media except for Instagram. I had to put podcast at the end of it.
Yeah, Instagram always like they make you work so hard for like an original like title. So I was like, oh, I'm like, we're just gonna stick a ton of underscores in here.
I don't really mess with I have stuff on Instagram, but I don't understand it, I guess. I post things and I get like 4 likes, if that. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
all right. Not a whole lot of people follow me. I don't do a lot of following. Maybe I'm facetious if that's the technical word or whatever, but like I don't like going and liking a bunch of people's like following a bunch of people just to try and get people to follow me back. I'd rather people just come follow my stuff
Yeah.
because then it's like organic. Because if I'm going out there just hitting a bunch of follows of every person out there just trying to get something back, they're not going to really listen to the show.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's cool like when you have a timeline full of stuff that like actually excites you and you look forward to looking at. Like nothing's worse than if you're just following a ton of people and it's not really in line with like the things that you like to see or read about or, you know.
I follow back other podcasters. Like if someone follows me, I will follow them back. But like far as random people that I have no idea who they are, I don't follow everyone that just follows me because I just, no offense to the listeners out there, guys, but I don't pay enough attention to actually know enough of what's going on. So I barely look at Instagram. I do most of my business with Facebook at these days, and I hate Facebook too.
Hey, if it works though.
So far, it did. I had to make a different profile because I had random people messaging my wife on my other account, my normal account that I've had for like 15 years
Oh no.
when I started the show. Now, I've always had bands and I've always had other stuff. I've never had any issues, but I had people starting to message my wife to try and get a hold of me because I wasn't responding to them on my Facebook page for the podcast. I was like, how did they figure out who I was and how they figure out who my wife is? And they started like Facebook calling her, like messaging, like phone call to her because I wasn't answering.
Oh, that's not cool. You
Like
gotta respect privacy, guys.
I was like, I'm at work. I don't know who this person is, so I'm not going to answer the phone call to some random person I'm not even a Facebook friend with.
Yeah. That
So,
crosses a boundary.
yeah. So after that, she got kind of upset and I kind of him-hawed around. And I was like, I'm just going to make a different account. So I made the branded Tinfoil Tales account, and that's where I do all my podcast stuff. So
Yeah, it looks good. I like that green shelf that you made.
the wall, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the back wall because I built this entire inside of this barn. I framed it in. It's
Okay.
basically a lofted cabin, one of those pay-as-you-go storage sheds, but I turned it into a recording studio. That way I can move everything out of my basement. So I'm outside and I'm not attached to the house. So it's kind of, even though I'm like 20 feet away from the house, I'm still not in the house. I'm hoping if anything bad mojos or whatever comes in here, it stays in here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, everything looks awesome because I was peeking at your setup for I think it was the Bigfoot conference and it looked really cool.
Oh,
Like your table.
the little green thing that I made. Yeah, that's
Yeah, that little green shelf and you had everything set up. I was like, that looks really cool.
so yeah, the studio, I've got the walls green too. I'm
I
getting,
was gonna say it's kind of your thing.
yeah, the green is my go-to. Like it's basically like my favorite color, so I try to utilize it best I can. So my wall's green, the stand's green. I'm messing around with a new logo, which I don't, you can probably see it now. I changed this one to green. I'm just kind of gradually changing things up. My wife's like, every time you start getting things made, then you change your logos. Like, I get unsatisfied. Like, every year I change things up. The first year I kept it the original way, and then last year I changed it again. Now this year I'm getting new stuff done. At some point I'll have all new podcast artwork, which
Yeah.
I wish by the time this one airs it'll already be done, but if not, it'll be coming at some point. But
Yeah.
I'm hiring someone out to do the artwork for the podcast. So hopefully here soon I'll have new podcast artwork.
That'll be nice.
The ones that I've done so far have all been AI, but my friend Easton Hawk, who is a illustrator, he's done all the podcasts or he's done all the artwork that's in my room that I record in, but basically he does a lot of cryptid artwork, so I've asked him to try and come up with an idea for new podcast artwork. So
Nice. Well, I'm excited to see it.
we have some ideas, but we'll see how it all turns out. I don't want to say anything until I know how it comes out and how we end up doing it, but yeah.
Yeah, rightfully so.
So I guess if you're listening and there's new artwork now, you guys know about it.
Stay tuned for awesome new graphics.
Right. Every episode, though, I do different artwork for the episode, so it's not like anyone really ever sees unless they scroll through their little podcast thing to see what's on there. But that's a whole
Yeah.
nother topic for something I won't complain about on air.
But yeah, I mean, so I kind of want to ask you, like what do you believe in? like what is your like belief? So like I know like you had your own experience,
Put me on the
but
spot.
yeah, I'm flipping the tables. You're getting interviewed now.
That is a good question because I don't have a straight up answer. And
Okay.
it's very it's very multi-layered. So
Okay.
I don't believe in a lot of things. And it's not to say that I don't believe people, but I don't believe everything that people experience is something that they think it is. So, as a rational, like I try and rationalize everything. If someone were to come out and say their house is haunted, and I go to their house, which I'm not going to do, but hypothetically, if I go to someone's house and I don't see or feel or anything's haunted, not that I'm a medium or anything like that, but I'm going to look for other things that it could be explained away. Now, I've went with people before and they've used meters and their meters were jumping all crazy. But if you hold up that meter to the roof, it goes really crazy because the wiring was crazy, old wiring. Therefore, that can cause people to feel anxious, like someone's watching them, all sorts of. It's because of those EMF meters, like the actual magnetic fields that are being produced from old faulty wiring.
Okay.
Is that going to make someone say their house is haunted? Possibly. Is the house actually haunted? Possibly. I don't know. But far as that goes, I get asked this a lot too about religion. People think I'm very, I don't want to say like hating on religion, but I am not a follower of any organized religion because it is very hard to say what is real and what is not real, what's right, what's wrong, because I was raised in a Pentecostal church. So basically
Oh,
there are no ghosts. There are no aliens. There are no Bigfoot. There are none of this stuff. It's all what the Bible says.
yep.
So for me, that is my background. I do not necessarily agree with that either. There's 40,000 different denominations of just Christianity. Who's to say which one is correct? Who's to say out of the thousands upon thousands of religions, which one is correct? So when it comes to religion, really, I don't care what people are. I have my own opinions and I just keep it to that. Like I have
Yeah.
my own beliefs. Like I believe there's a higher power. I don't know what it is. And then as far as like cryptids and everything else, I want to believe. I know what I saw. I still struggle to believe it because there's no bodies. There's been no evidence. People see weird things. I believe people are seeing something, but I can't say for sure what it is because I don't know. If there's Bigfoot out there, you have to have a breeding population. If there's dogmen out there, you have to have some sort of breeding population. Nowadays, people justify it as interdimensional beings.
Yeah.
To me, that sounded crazy a few years ago, but now you hear it more and more and more. And now everyone's throwing out the word Nephilim, everyone's throwing out demons, and it's just like,
It's getting a little out of hand. A little
yeah.
bit. Yeah.
So I don't, like I said, I want to believe. That's what I always say is I want to believe. But it's going to
Okay.
take a little bit more to convince me that everything is real. So I do believe that there is intelligent life outside of Earth. So I will say there's aliens because it makes more sense there would be than there wouldn't be. But
Yeah.
do I think they're coming down here and abducting people and doing all sorts of experiments and all sorts of stuff like that? I mean, kind of 50-50 on that one. But
Yeah.
people are experiencing something, so who am I to say they're wrong?
Okay. I mean, that's a pretty good take.
So I'm open to the ideas and the possibilities, but I'm not a firm believer in any of it.
Which I think like any rationally minded person, like one of the biggest things that you're taught in the paranormal field is like you need skeptics. like skeptics is like the best, like going into paranormal investigations, going into research, everything. It's so important to remain skeptic to some point. And if you're somebody who is not at all skeptic, to have some kind of skeptic on your team, because I feel like it's that yin and yang. Because if you had, no skeptic on your team, somebody to rationalize or be level-headed, I mean, you would think every little thing,
That
you
is
know,
why I don't like going out on paranormal groups because a lot of
yeah,
people that I went on a few of them. Say this a lot, but everything is paranormal. I was like, no, you have to rule everything out before you can say it's paranormal.
yeah,
That's how I see it. And some people don't see it that way. They want that to be paranormal. They want it so bad that it's all paranormal. I was like, you have
yeah,
to be of the mind of saying that no, let's rule this out. Let's listen to this. Let's try and rationalize it. And then if we can't come out here and say, explain it, then you can look into paranormal.
yeah. But I mean, that if you go into it, that mindset, that's how you come out with like substantial evidence.
Hmm.
Like evidence that when you put that out, people, I mean, it just adds to credibility.
Right.
And people are going to look at that and say, "Hey, like these people really do like due diligence on their investigations and they're not quick to jump every time you hear a knock or a light flickers or,
Yeah. That is something that I think that there's a lack of, and without trying to sound like I'm crapping here on paranormal groups, but like everyone is more or less wanting the evidence for the fact that they want the glory from the evidence.
oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think one of the hardest lessons I've had to learn in the paranormal field is when I first kind of stepped onto the scene, I didn't know. I didn't realize, I'm thinking, I honestly felt like, okay, am I going to be like the stupidest person in this room because I don't understand the first thing about physics or science and what I quickly learned is true investigators are really into that kind of stuff but you find a lot of people who are clout chasing.
Hmm.
And I mean, listen, if you're a content creator and that's your thing, I mean, I don't want to sit here and sound judgy, but I think for the people who are working genuinely hard at bringing evidence that really speaks volumes to proof of the afterlife or evidence that there could really be cryptid existence, there are people that are spending hard-earned money and time away from their families to truly back these claims with substantial evidence, and they're really like they're doing the work. If you just want to be a content creator and you just want to have fun and you want to do every flickering light, every knock, every little sound, and you want to scare people, that's fine, but like put a disclaimer and don't try and convince everybody for clout that like you're a serious paranormal investigator, because I think it takes away and it kind of is a slap in the face to those that are working genuinely hard at it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I see a lot of that since kind of stepping onto the scene, just seeing like it's really big for people. They want the fame, they want the shows, and it's like that's great and all. And especially like, again, not knocking anybody, but it's just, if I've seen some really great, documentary style shows. I've seen some amazing documentaries that are done super well about the paranormal. And then you just see some that are, we all watch them to get scared and have fun and, you know, just add to the ambiance of spooky season. But I think like being able to distinguish between those and not trying to pass off, clout chasing as legitimate evidence and yeah.
No, I agree with that. And I don't feel like I'm harsh sometimes And I know maybe people like me because of that or whatever, but like I don't say a whole lot on the show too much, but some of the posts I make, I don't know if it rubs people the wrong way, but if it does, I guess whatever. But the other day I saw something online and these communities, not just paranormal, but obviously cryptids, UFOs, whatever, that's all that ever seems to be going on is inner fighting and clout chasing.
Yeah.
And it makes it very disheartening to want to even be involved or considered involved in some of these fields because the stuff that they're fighting about is just straight up ridiculous.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very souring. I talk with
Mm.
someone else quite a bit who's also another podcaster, and I question why I do what I do a lot. But now I just feel like I still do it because I still enjoy it. But
Yeah.
the moment that I stop enjoying it, I'm not going to continue to do it.
Yeah. And I think it's sad because it's talked about a lot. And I think you touched on a good topic. Like, I didn't realize how much fighting truly goes on in the paranormal community. But for those of us that like don't condone the fighting and we truly want that paranuity, like all of us collaborating and supporting one another and sharing each other's stuff. And I know that that sounds super kumbaya and not attainable, but I can honestly attest like there were some people that when I came into the actual paranormal community and I was, learning, and I mean I'm still learning. I don't know everything. I mean, I'm only a year into truly investigating and doing theory papers and trying to figure out, certain things that I've seen on investigations and figure out why it happens. I have asked some pretty big names in the paranormal community and they have done nothing but absolutely accept me and love me and open their arms to me. And I shout them out all the time on our social media because those people don't have to be that way. Um, there's certainly some people in the paranormal community that they are too big for their britches and are very much they're going to treat you like you're new on the scene. Um, and then there's some that you just would never know, they've been super famous, but they will open their door to you just like any other human being and would never treat you less than. And I have been super blessed to come across a lot of those people who don't condone the fighting, who are super, when that fighting's going on, they refuse to partake in it and they continue to lead by example. And so I feel very blessed to have found the side of the community that kind of stays away from that. And I've been able to kind of just watch from a distance, disappointingly, because you never want to see people fighting over really petty, silly things when we can all kind of lift each other up and support one another. And the more that we come, I feel like people are forgetting that the more that we come together and the more that we help one another, the bigger the outcomes and the more community you're going to create and just make this that much better. I don't really know where this stigma or this idea came that, by lighting somebody else's candle that it snuffs yours out because that's not the truth. But it really sucks that that's the climate of things. Um, but there are still really, really good people in the community out there who truly make it a blessing to be a part of.
I think a lot of it is everyone wants that. I've already kind of meant, but like not so much just the cloud, but like they want the glory of being the ones that found something. And
Yeah.
that is not just paranormal, that is literally in any aspect in life. Everyone wants to be special.
Agreed.
So I don't fault people for being the way they are because that is literally human nature. Everyone wants to be something. It's just I fault the ones of how they go about it. Like
Yeah.
there's right ways to do things and there's wrong ways to do things, and I see a lot of hatefulness. I see a lot of backstabbing and sabotaging, and it's just like Why?
There's no room for it. And that's the thing is I just think people I do feel like a lot of it also has to kind of do with today's generation and the mindset that like I feel like we've become and I hate to say it like that because I don't want to generalize everybody because it's not true for everybody, but I feel like a large majority of people have adopted a very selfish mindset, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very like me, and it's a rat race. It's just every man for himself. And how do I accomplish this? How do I become the best? And it's like you going back to that old saying that which I'm probably sure some of you have heard from your grandparents, like they always said you get more what was it? It was you get more flies with sugar than you do with vinegar.
Right.
And being like nasty and hateful and petty and kind of like gatekeeping, and you're not going to create community or friends or harbor like an intentful space of love and acceptance and all of that good stuff that you could have by doing that. And in turn, all you're going to do is create a circle of equally, jealous, hateful, petty people because what you put out there is what you're going to also attract. So I don't know. That's just my mindset is like we've just become super selfish, super me. And the more that we do that, that's the environments that we're going to start to create. And if it wasn't for some of those kind of cycle breakers, like the people that come in and say, no, like we don't have to be like this. We can lift one another up and kind of helping people to adopt that idea and that mindset. We would probably be non-existent.
I say it a lot and it does sound cliche, but there is strength with unity. And I feel like for some reason there's something in life that does not want everyone to be unified. I don't know if that's just our human nature or by design or what, but we're always going to argue. We're always going to have disagreements.
Mm-hmm. It's that yin and yang. Kind of like
Mm-hmm.
I said before, it's a balance. I feel like without, without darkness, how do we appreciate light?
Right.
How do we learn hard life lessons and how do we, find our way if we've never known struggle? So I feel like as much as I hate it, you do have a good point. I mean, it's suffering is kind of necessary. It's it's a balance.
I just wish people could figure out ways to go about it where it's not dragging everyone else into
I
it.
agree. I agree 1,000%. Because it's just an unnecessary headache. And like honestly, in today's day and age, we don't have the time or the patience or the energy to deal with it. It's so exhausting.
It's not just in these fields for anyone listening, and I've mentioned it before. There's a lot of it in any sort of gathering of people because that is just
Hmm.
people in general.
Yeah. I
So
mean, you can look at your workplace, you can look at your families, like it happens anywhere and everywhere.
there's always the cliques.
Ugh, I hate that word. Anytime I hear it, I'm like my spine just ugh.
That is
We're
the,
anti-clicks here.
yeah, that is a thing that I have learned from doing music, from doing podcasting, from doing just pretty much anything in life. At 40 years old now, the world is full of them. And
Yeah.
I am not involved in any of them. I'm always the outsider.
Yeah. But that's a good thing.
I don't try and strive to fit in with anyone else. I just do what I do. And I know a lot of people don't understand my mentality on things, and I'm not acting like I'm better than anyone else because that's not my philosophy or how I stand. I just don't care. I don't
Yeah.
care if I fit in. I don't care if people like me. I don't care if people don't like me. I just don't care.
Yeah.
So I try to make
That's-
my children understand that philosophy, but they don't listen. I was like, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about some of the stupid stuff. Like you're in school. Like it's
Yeah.
it's middle school, junior high drama. You don't care about it.
And you know what's so funny though? It's like being in a parent role, like I can remember those days where you got wrapped up in the drama or you were overly sensitive and you felt so involved and like that was the biggest problem in your, it was such a small universe at the time. And it's like it feels so astronomical. And then when you get older, I think it's just that's what changes the perspective is like when you become an adult and you realize the world is so much bigger, you kind of just get to a point where you're like, this is a drop in the bucket. Like this is one or two people, or these are like this is one person. Like how much weight does that really hold? And like the only weight that should really like I guess the way I should say it is the only person's opinion that should hold any weight in my life is myself.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm a Christian, so I always say me and God. Like so I mean that's it's sad because kids can't really see past what feels like super big to them. And I always worry about that like with my daughter because she's still young, so she hasn't hit that school age yet, but I'm always like, "Oh my gosh, I hope that she can adapt that like I don't give a you know what attitude." But
Yeah.
it's they don't think like that.
So my 5-year-old is very sensitive. So
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing to be though.
I feel bad just because I know she'll get her feelings hurt in life. And then it's going to make daddy want to go hurt people.
That's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard.
I feel that way with all the kids, though. Anytime someone bothers my kids, I want to go bother them, but you can't.
No, they'll those very things that, it won't cripple them by any means, but it will, it'll strengthen them and help them to grow and learn and find their voice. And you just be a super awesome daddy and have their backs and they're gonna be great human beings.
I keep telling myself that, but then you don't have a teenager yet.
Uh
Just
I
wait.
have a three-nager. I have a three-nager. It's like somewhat close, but I feel like it's gonna get way worse when she's an actual teenager.
I say I have 13, 11, 5, and 3.
My goodness.
So I deal with everything.
Oh my gosh, I bet.
But these teenage years and the preteen ages and the attitudes and everything else, that is the real horror stories of my shows. Come and live a day in my life of having mouthy kids. So
Yeah.
that is the real horrors that go on in my house. People ask if there's ghosts. I was like, I'd rather be talking to the ghosts and listen to my kids screaming at each other.
Plot twist.
Yeah,
It's not the afterlife you should be scared of, it's parenthood.
truth, truth.
That was the real subject of today's episode is true life horrors of parenthood.
Definitely.
I
Well,
feel like kids can be supernaturally scary, like your car keys go missing and the food disappears out of your house and your bills just get crazy high out of nowhere. I mean, it's a supernatural phenomenon, right?
or when they decide they're gonna have friends over and just do a seance in the basement and summon demons, there's that too.
Oh yeah, I forgot to put that on the list. I'm gonna have to deal with that when Maisie gets a little bit older. I'm gonna have to put up a no seances in the basement rule.
Yeah,
No Ouija boards.
we had that a year ago, and then that's when a lot of weirder stuff started happening. So thanks, kids,
Oh man.
friends. Yeah. I went
Yeah,
I said I went into overprotective dad mode, and one of their friends that I was freaking out about's never came over since then. They probably went home and told their parents that crazy dad was screaming about demons and spirits and opening doorways, and I don't want to go back over there. Okay. Don't come over here.
Well, yeah, but you know what? Their parents are gonna be like, "Oh yeah, don't go over there." Yeah, until they try and have friends over at your house and your couches and shit start levitating. Then come talk to me.
All right. When your 3-year-old starts calling out ghost, saying he's
Yeah.
seen when he's 2, he's saying ghost, ghost. how's he know what a ghost is? But he's over here talking about it like a month later after you guys supposedly were talking to something.
Yeah. So, and on that note, I actually have a story for you, kind of regarding that. And it's what happened. There's an episode on our podcast too about this because I had my cousins on. Um, we I did not want to, and I was brought up in a house that was like, hey, Ouija boards are never allowed here. And I'm pretty sure my grandma would probably have packed all of my room up and put it to the curb if she ever caught a Ouija board in her house. But instead, we went over to my grandma's sister's house, and my cousin was having a Sweet 16 sleepover, and one of her little friends brought it and was like, hey, let's do a seance, let's do a little Ouija board session. And I was like, hey guys, I don't think that's a good idea. And they were like, no, it's fine. We ended up playing with it, and we already thought that my aunt's house had a little something to it because we had an experience there when we were like young, and we still to this day laugh about it because we could never explain it, and it scared the ever living you know what out of us. So we ended up they were playing with the Ouija board, and it wasn't really doing anything, and they said, hey, why aren't you moving? And it slid to the edge and just pointed at me. And my cousin and her friends were like, see, it's because you're not playing. And I'm like, yeah, okay, guys. I'm like, I know that you guys are trying to get me to play. Like, I didn't believe it. And I was like, I'm not touching it. But like, this is probably you guys just BSing. They were like, all right, think of something in your head. And I think it was like Nick Jonas. Like, I picked something random. I think it was like a poster on my cousin's wall or something. So I just closed my eyes, thought about it, and I'm like, okay. So here they are with the Ouija board, and they're like, what is Morgan thinking about? And it literally spelt out Jonas. And I was like, okay. I'm like, that's a little odd. So like, oh, you're gonna play now? And I was like, how did it know that? So I was like, all right, maybe coincidence. I'm like, maybe they just knew. Um, I put my hands on the planchette and we started to play, and things started to get really weird. Um, just the whole vibe changed, and things got super spooky, and the girls were like, hey, I'm not really feeling this, and other people were getting freaked out. They were like, I feel like we should stop. And the one girl who had brought the Ouija board, I feel like she was like weirdly attached to it because she was like she wanted to keep playing, and she was like egging it on. And so they asked it one more question, and it started to count down. And I immediately was like, hard stop. Absolutely not. We're ending this right now. So I was like, put that on goodbye and let's close this up. So we did. And before I knew it, I think it was my cousin or one of the girls had stood up and they said, hey, like, do you guys like feel weird? Like, they were like, something just feels off. And I look out the window, and it's like a dark shadow with like a top hat. And it's standing under the lamppost right outside my cousin's window. And I was like, what the actual F is that? And I looked at my cousin. I was like, am I hallucinating? Like, I'm like, please tell me you see that, because I've seen spirits my whole life. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm seeing this or if this is like a stranger, or if we should be worried about like some peeping Tom. Like, I was like, it's a little freaky. So she looked out the window. She saw it too, and she said, oh my God. So she immediately was like, I don't like this. Like, we need to start praying. Something doesn't feel good. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, I don't like this at all. I never should have touched this thing. Immediate regret. We're like, we need to like shut this down and go to bed. So we like, the girls were all freaking out. I'm trying to calm them down. We look out the window, it's gone. So obviously it didn't make us feel too good, because now it's like kind of like losing a spider in your room. You're like, where did this thing go? And what was that? And so we were all freaked out. We ended up crawling into our sleeping bags. We're all huddled in my cousin's room. We're telling my aunt about it. She's like, it's just a game. Like, stop being silly ninnies. Like, just let it go. So we all go to sleep. And my cousin said I had woken up in the middle of the night, and I kept saying to her, do you see it? And she's like, do I see what? And she's like, you're freaking me out. So apparently in my sleep, I had sat up and I kept pointing and telling her about a shadow in the corner. Um, and I feel like I don't really remember that. It was like very vague. And I'm like, I might have been half awake. I'm not sure. But she said she looked up and there was this thing in the corner, like top of her ceiling. And she was just freaked out. Like she like couldn't sleep. So morning comes and everything seems okay. My cousin's still really freaked out. We all are getting ready to walk out to the dining room. We're going to have breakfast and everybody's going to go home. So, like, we all walk out and her friend Alyssa's like, hey, has anyone seen my sidekick? And she's looking everywhere for it. She's like, I plugged it in and we can't find the phone anywhere. Everybody is like, legit. She's like, all right, stop messing with me. Who took my phone? Cannot find it. Looking, everything. Like, everything is where we left it before bed. So it's like really weird that it would just be her phone. And we're like, whatever. We called it. It was on ring. Couldn't find it anywhere. It was not ringing, like was not making a sound. We all are sitting at the table. So nobody went to the bathroom. Nobody like moved anything. We all left at the same time. We ended up coming back to the room and it was just sitting on the table. And then my cousin was like, I'm telling you, I feel like we did something. Like, I feel like we opened a portal. She's like, I don't know what we did, but I'm not feeling good about this. I was like, yeah, I wasn't either. And I didn't want to touch this thing. And long story short, her mom, who resides in the house now, she has been having like crazy activity. She says, she's like, I don't know what you girls did. She's like, you jacked my house up. She's like, you guys brought something here. She's like, my house is haunted as anything. And my cousin ended up, because it was my grandmother's sister and her daughter, they bought houses next to each other. So both my cousins moved out of that house over to the house next door because they couldn't do it anymore with the occurrences. So that house is still like severely freaky and has some stuff going on to this day. But I thought it was a good tie-in because that's another experience that I had growing up that was severely freaky. And I haven't touched a Ouija board since then because I was like, it was just a bad experience. But that's like the short story of kind of what happened. It was just, I don't think you should ever like dabble with stuff in your home or host seances or anything like that
Especially when you
you're
don't know what
trying.
you're doing.
Yeah, like definitely don't. That's not like a 16th birthday party, like slumber party, like opener. Like I'm like, that's such a bad idea.
I just feel like a lot of people open things and they don't know how to close them, so they leave that doorway open. So if you guys were messing around with something and
Yeah.
it wasn't sealed properly back, it's like, is that doorway still open? If whoever's living there now is still saying there's stuff going on, maybe that
Yeah.
door was never closed.
Oh, 100% it was never closed. It never was. They've all had really like the stories that my cousins have told me like have been absolutely terrifying. Um my one cousin, her brother he lived there for some time after her. She moved out not long after that. Like she was like, something's wrong with this house. I cannot live here. Moved over to the other house. And then her brother stayed there and he was by himself. And so like, I mean, obviously my aunt lived there still, but on nights where she was working or whatever, he'd be home alone. And he legitimately one night was telling us he was absolutely like so terrified. He was almost like crying. Like, and he's a grown man. So like he was like, I have to ask her and I have to listen to the episode again because it was kind of a longer story, but something happened where he saw like something absolutely terrifying standing on the stairs, I think it was. and he ran out the back deck door, and like he said he jumped from like the top step, like down like 10 steps just to get to the bottom as fast as he could to get over to the other house because he was so scared. And his sister was like, I've never seen him that like terrified before. So I believe that if that scared him that badly, like there's definitely still something going on over there. And I think, again, coming back to intention, the girl who had brought the Ouija board, she had some like, her intentions were not good. She turned out to be not a very nice person, and she was going through some really dark stuff. So I don't think she should have been messing around with the Ouija board because I don't think that helped the case. Um, but it was definitely a lesson learned, and I will never touch another one after that.
Yeah, I don't recommend anyone to mess with them.
Yeah,
But
and don't bring them to other people's houses and play with them.
I always thought it was strange that they're sold by like Milton Bradley, isn't it? Like they're like a
Yeah,
manufactured like toy now.
like Hasbro, yeah.
Yeah, has whatever it was. What was the original point? Like who decided to make this and say, "Oh, we're gonna put it next to Monopoly"? Like it's just very strange.
You need to, I saw a meme and I was like, this is so true. It said something like, you need to be 21 to drink, but only like ages 4 to 16 to summon the devil. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty, like, that's pretty legit. That's a legit statement.
Before we wrap this up, I was actually when you were talking, it made me think about this, and you put me on the spot, and I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Why do you think paranormal stuff like this, like if someone were to do a Ouija board in a house and they leave the house, but they're on the same sort of property, why is it quote unquote normal for the activity to stay in the house? Why does it not leave the house? Like, what keeps the paranormal activity in a residence? Like, is it a property that's on it? Is it just a domain that's on it? The ghosts no boundaries? Like, oh, you went across the street to so and so's property. Now I can't come over and get you.
Yeah.
Like, how does that
I
work?
mean, that's a really good question. And it's actually something that I'm currently studying. So I'm working on two different studies right now, one having to do with music and the paranormal, and then also kind of intention and boundaries with the paranormal. And one of the things that I've tried to figure out, because it seems like it's a rule some places, but then it doesn't work in other places. So like I've been to locations where I feel like the energy, or whatever you want to call it, the spirit, the energy, the entity, it seems like it is all over the place. And I've had things before where I haven't necessarily had an attachment, but I've had something be able to connect with me from a location that I've been, and it's been able to reach me. And so I'm like, that kind of challenged my theory of like, okay, so do these things stay? Do they have to physically attach to something? That I don't know. But I've been to other locations where it seems like activity is only in the home and not the land, or it's only, for a certain object and nowhere else. So it's odd, and that's kind of, it's just a really good question because it's something that I don't have the answer to yet. And I don't know if in this lifetime I will. I would really love to see another investigator, if they are able to achieve that answer, or maybe one day I will, but there's so many different circumstances that I've come across that it's so hard right now to figure out why certain locations have boundaries and some don't, and what exactly that determining factor is. Like, what is the very thing that keeps the activity in one place, and why does it not stay in one place in others?
I will talk to you off air here in a minute about some of the strange things that go on here and why I don't know if it's just the house or if it's the property or if it's the entire area.
Yeah.
But before we wrap this up, though, again, let the audience know where they can find you at and everything else about your show?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said earlier, you guys can find us at the Ghoulfriend Hour. I also forgot to mention that we have a podcast website. So it's the ghoulfriendhourpodcast.com. That will also have some fun merch and little like cute accessories, stuff from our show, little clips. But mainly if you can go to our Instagram, it's the underscore Ghoulfriend_hour_. It will have our link tree with all of our fun stuff for you to come get weird with us. Yeah, and you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, anywhere that you can stream podcasts. And then hopefully after this conversation, maybe soon we will get on Patreon.
Do you do any live events? Do you go to any like conventions or anything like that?
Oh yeah. So we tried to go, it's been kind of sporadic lately, but we are looking at possibly going to the New Jersey, I think it's called the New Jersey Paranuity Expo or convention. But you can pretty much catch us wherever. A lot of the times we're spectators. For now, since it's our first year, we did just do our first vendor event at Mass Paracon, which was run by Sam Baltrusis. That was really fun. So we usually keep you guys updated on our socials on where we're going to be and if we're just attending or if we're going to have a vendor table, but catch us on socials to kind of keep up with that stuff.
Awesome. And for anyone listening, I say this a lot and it doesn't ever end up happening. I will make sure to include links in the show notes. If you have links available, I will put them in there. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'll get you links, and then they never do, and then I don't feel the need to go and hunt them down. So by the time the episode comes out, I don't put the links in there. I was like, I mean, I asked someone to send me your links. I'm just trying to help you.
Yeah, I can definitely get you our links.
Okay, well, there should be links in the notes for anyone listening. And if not, we're going to blame Morgan for not giving them to me.
Well, thank you so much for having me on and getting spooky with me. I appreciate it.
Yep, not a problem. Thanks for coming on here and talking with me tonight. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, stay spooky, friends.
On that note, we're going to wrap this one up. So thanks to Morgan and thanks for listening. And that's the show, everyone. I really hope you guys enjoyed the conversations. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com or go to the contact section of tinfoiltales.com. Just get your message to me. We'll get something scheduled for a future episode. And just remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.
Tinfoil Tales in the headphones. Yeah, it's time to rock. Got a story about a cryptid creature. Let's take a walk. Bigfoot, Dogman, they're out there in the dark. The truth is out there like an alien spark. UFO sightings got the whole world shook. Conspiracies unfold like a story in a book. Media control trying to keep us blind, but I won't be fooled, gonna use my own mind. In history they don't want us to know the secrets they're hiding, the truth they won't show. Dominate our society, they keep us in chains. But I'm standing tall, it's time to break the reins. Control, trying to keep us blind, but I won't be fooled, gonna use my own mind. In history